still hot here in Miami, but technically it's fall, so I thought I would make one of my favorite fall desserts today, which is apple crisp. And this version is vegan, and you can also make it gluten-free if you need to. I'm playing around a little bit with the video and the microphone settings, so if anything comes out a little bit weird, I am so sorry, but hopefully it's better and not worse. And as usual, if you want to follow along with the recipe, it is on my website, and I will put a link in the description below. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm also going to spray some cast iron pans with cooking oil. I'm just using cast iron pans because I want this look. I'm going to take some photos later, but of course you can just use a regular baking dish as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is peel and chop my apples. You can use whatever apples you prefer, but I usually like Granny Smith for apple crisp because they have such a strong tart flavor. Some people also like Honeycrisp or Gala, Pink Lady, Fuji. These apples are all a little bit sweeter than Granny Smith. So for me, it's a little too sweet when you add in the sugar and everything, but it's up to you and your taste. Regardless of whatever flavor of apples you use, just make sure they're firm apples that are good for baking. Otherwise, they just might turn into mush in the oven. So anyway, I am just peeling them and cutting them into slices that are about 3/4 of an inch wide. And then I am cutting those in half. At the end, I want to end up with 7 cups of chopped apples or 800 grams. Alright, so my apples are all chopped. Now I am just going to take some lemons and squeeze them until I have 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I'm going to add the lemon juice to my apples along with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I'll just toss everything to make sure that the apples get evenly coated. So in a separate smaller bowl, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of brown sugar along with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. If you used sweet apples instead of tart apples, you might want to reduce the sugar to 1/4 cup, but totally up to you. So I'm just going to mix that up so it's nice and even, and then I will slowly add it to the apples. As I'm adding it, I'm going to stop to mix up the apples so that I can get a nice even coating. And then these will just go right into my oiled pans or your baking dish, whatever you're using. Alright, so now I'm going to start on my crumbly topping. I have cleaned up my mixing bowl here, and I am just going to add 1 cup of rolled oats, 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. If you're making the gluten-free version, you can use 1 cup of oat flour in place of the all-purpose flour. Just check to make sure that you're using gluten-free oats and all your other ingredients are gluten-free, because sometimes there can be cross-contamination in the factory or whatever. So once those dry ingredients are all mixed up, I'm going to add 3/4 cup of cold vegan butter. I am using Earth Balance here, and I have chopped it up into smaller pieces before I added it in. So I'm going to start out using a fork to cut the butter into the dry ingredients until it's about half combined. Then I'm just going to take my fingers and mix it up until it is crumbly. You don't want to use your hands too much because you don't want the butter to get too soft. The key to a nice crumbly texture is cold butter. So if your butter is too soft, your topping might come out a little bit gritty, and we don't want that. So now we're basically done. I'm just going to spread the topping all over the apples so it is nice and even. And now this will go in the oven for about 35 to 45 minutes. Your timing is going to vary depending on the dish that you're using. So basically what you want to look for is the topping to turn a little bit golden, and the apples should be fork tender. That's how you know they're ready. Once the apple crisp is ready, you just want to let it cool for about 15 minutes or so before serving it. Of course, we all know apple crisp is not apple crisp without a scoop of vanilla ice cream. I've got my vegan vanilla ice cream right here. I've got a little bit of caramel sauce that I whipped up. If you want to make it yourself, it's pretty easy. Just mix up equal parts of coconut cream and brown sugar. You can add a little cornstarch to thicken it up, a little salt if you'd like salted caramel, and that's it. Just heat it up for about 5 minutes over the stove, and you're good. I haven't had this in so long. It is so good. My mom taught me to finish my plate, okay? Well, that is all for this one, but if you want more fall and Thanksgiving recipes, you're in luck because I've got several of them coming up in the next month or so. So if you'd like to see those, hit subscribe and I'll see you there. Bye.